thus far to suspend assistance when there are concerns until they and we are able to make sure that those that those concerns are fully addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Schiffer. I have one more question. I appreciate you know, we could talk a lot about this, but we all know that there are many checks, and we go directly to the people in instances like this, and we have lots of partners and lots of capability to do that, because this is not the first time we've done it. Ms. Amiri, to you, there is this oftentimes this false impression that providing humanitarian aid will support oppressive regimes, but what we actually know is that oppressive regimes oppress, right? That is what they do. In that when people actually have food, when they have security, when they have resources, they're more able to resist oppression. So you have the amazing work of, amazing job of helping support the Afghan women and girls. Can you tell me how those resources help those women and girls resist and continue to pursue freedom?
Thank you very much for that question. I think one issue that we lose sight of is Afghan women are embedded in society. They are not separate from it. So what the humanitarian assistance that we provide, it's the population that is in most need of it is most vulnerable. They're women and children of the population that is at most at risk for food insecurity. It's women and children. In fact, when you look at the numbers, it's over 70% go to women and children. And the conversations that I have with Afghan women and girls, they are desperate. They have lost everything overnight. And what they struggle with is not just the fact that they've lost their voice. Many of the mothers that I speak to, the women that I speak to, they note that that one of the things that they most struggle with is that the fact that they don't know how they're going to feed their children.
And thank you, Congressman Crow. We now proceed to Congressman Tim Burchett from Tennessee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kind of in the middle here. Is it possible to provide aid to Afghanistan without that aid benefiting the Taliban?
We believe it is, and we believe that we do so, and we believe that we have systems in place to make sure that that assistance is going directly to the Afghan people. And I offer that without any illusions about just how difficult an operating environment it is.
But it's funny you say that, because the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction has said it is impossible to provide aid without benefiting the Taliban. So I'm a little worried that the U.S. aid is making its way to the Taliban, and you're telling me that's not happening.
I'm telling you that we have very, very rigorous processes in place to make sure that none of our assistance is diverted. When we have concerns, as I was just mentioning earlier, we work with our implementing partners to take swift action. We have been willing to suspend assistance to make sure that any of those concerns are addressed, precisely because we share your concerns that the Taliban does not benefit from our program.
Of that aid sent to Afghanistan, how much do you think is paid? Is just paid to the Taliban for taxes, fees, rent, and other bills? Is there any? Is that being tracked?
It is being tracked, and I would offer that there is a distinction between aid diversion and things like payment of utility bills. And just for an example, for the midwives that we seek to support in Afghanistan, they need running water. They need electricity to be able to deliver healthy babies. We would not suggest to our implementing partners that they not pay their utility bills.
I appreciate that. Would it surprise you that Cigar polled 37 NGOs, that's non-government organizations, and they found $10.1 million tax dollars that were paid to the Taliban? And they just polled 37, and from my perusal, there's literally hundreds of those. So that's kind of contradicting what you all are saying. I'm really concerned what's going on with your organization.
Well, I would offer, sir, and we're happy to come up and talk to you about this in more detail. And we have certainly talked to Cigar about this, that in arriving at that $10.1 million figure, they amalgamated a number of different categories. I would not consider, for example, the payment of utility bills to be support for the Taliban in the ways that I know concern you and concern us.
Well, so I'm just a little confused. One group's saying it doesn't, you're telling me it doesn't exist. The other body is saying it does. I'm glad that we passed a bill at the end of last year that's supposed to require the State Department to track this number and report it to Congress. I'm hoping that the President sees fit to sign that into law. It sure does send a conflicting message out. Are y'all comfortable with the partnership between the Taliban and China?
So look, the Chinese are pursuing a very different policy from the United States vis-a-vis Afghanistan. They still have an embassy operating. They're leaning pretty far forward in terms of business activities. But from what we can tell, the sort of flash of the commitment you hear from Beijing, there's not great data to back it up around sort of a major, huge BRI or CPEC play in Afghanistan.
Well, last year the Chinese inked a $1.5 billion oil deal with the Taliban. What's the State Department doing about that to combat that influence?
We don't see Afghanistan as a place where we need to compete with the Chinese and the Russians. As for this particular deal, I'd be happy to follow up, but I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, real quickly, has an implementing partner ever been harmed as a result of y'all providing cigar information? Simple yes or no. I'm out of time.
Yeah, no, and apologies about that. I would like to come back and talk to you about this question in a separate setting, precisely because we don't want to create additional risk for any of our partners or for the Afghan people.
Thank you, Congressman Barcher. We now proceed to
Mr. Chairman, I would ask the chair to make that happen. We've got a lot of questions that can't seem to be answered, and at some point Congress needs to know. We are. As the Constitution tells us, we're over this, and we should be. I think we should be exercising our ability. If not, I think we ought to start cutting some funds, which is long overdue.
I agree with all the above. We'll proceed. Congressman Mike Lawler of New York.
Mr. West and Mr. Schiffer, in Saigar Sopko's reports and in his testimony to this committee, he documented several ways in which the Taliban has been diverting and stealing humanitarian aid. Do you have any reason to believe that he is lying in his testimony or his reports?
I will offer from a USAID perspective that we certainly don't have any reason to believe that he is lying. I think we have questions which we're talking to him about the analysis that underlies that we have not yet seen, and making sure that we're drawing the distinctions between diversion.
Reclaim my time, Mr. West.
You know, it's clear that there have been instances of reports of diversion, of reports of the Taliban trying to interfere in aid delivery, and when that happens, as
I asked a simple question: do you have any reason to believe he's lying? Yes or no?
Yeah, I would say the same thing as Assistant Administrator Schiffer. We're in close touch with SIGAR about the methodology behind that reporting, but no, I do not have reason to believe.
I'm going to ask you two yes or no questions, and please actually try to stick to that. Yes or no, have you seen any evidence of the Taliban demanding payoffs to permit the implementation of aid projects? Yes or no?
And I do apologize. I'm happy to have a fuller discussion in a separate
Mr. West?
setting.
Yes or no?
I'd be happy to have a conversation with you in a separate setting.
Yes or no, have you seen evidence of the Taliban diverting aid to preferred populations such as Taliban fighters and family members? Yes or no?
Well, with all due respect, we've seen...
No, you're showing no respect to this committee, but please, yes or no? I'm asking you very simple, basic questions. It's yes or no.
We've seen attempts.
You've seen attempts. Okay. Yes or no, Mr. West?
We've likewise seen attempts, and I'm aware of several instances in which our implementing partners have fully ceased operations, in some cases in entire provinces.
Okay. Yes or no, have you seen evidence of the Taliban pressuring the UN and other NGOs to hire Taliban members, relatives, and allies?
I will say again, we've seen attempts.
Same.
Yes or no, have you seen evidence of the Taliban pressuring the UN and other NGOs to issue contracts to Taliban-affiliated companies?
I have not personally seen that. I've heard that there have been attempts to do that as well.
Same.
Yes or no, have you seen evidence of the Taliban pressuring the UN and other NGOs to partner with Taliban-affiliated NGOs?
Again, I know that there have been attempts.
Same here.
Yes or no, have you seen evidence of the Taliban embedding intelligence officials in UN agencies to supervise their work, facilitate interference and diversion, and censor reporting about it?
On that one, I have no knowledge.
On that one, in my case, no.
Yes or no, have you seen evidence of the Taliban collecting taxes and other fees from UN and U.S.-funded implementing partners?
Depending upon what constitutes other fees, yes.
I agree with my colleague.
Okay. So, certainly through testimony that this committee has received, we have established that the Taliban have benefited from the aid that we send to Afghanistan. Mr. West, this past November, Saigar Sopko testified that he has been trying to meet with you since you were appointed 2.5 years ago. He has met with every special representative for Afghanistan since 2012, but it wasn't until after Sopko testified publicly about your refusal to meet that you finally agreed to a meeting last week. Why did it take you 2.5 years and congressional testimony for you to finally meet with the Special Inspector General?
I was glad to have the opportunity. The State Department respects the role that SIGAR plays in the oversight of Afghanistan policy, and we had, I think, a candid and productive exchange that I hope will continue.
That's not what I asked you. I asked you, why did it take you 2.5 years?
I was glad to have the opportunity to sit down with Mr. Sopko. I think we need to do so more often.
A lot faster than 2.5 years?
You know, when decisions are made about whether to meet with an oversight body, it is a conversation that I have together with the leadership of the State Department. And when we had those discussions, we didn't feel it was appropriate at the time.
But given his testimony before this committee, given his reports, given the contradiction between some of the things that you have testified to and what he has said, wouldn't you think it would actually behoove you to quickly get to the bottom of the discrepancies between you and he on what is actually happening with the Taliban?
You know, I think at the outset of the administration, our sense was that SIGAR's role was to oversee reconstruction activities. We're completely out of the reconstruction activities. What we're doing is to meet the basic needs, humanitarian needs of Afghanistan. I think, you know, we've had a time to reflect on the kind of relationship we want with SIGAR. Deputy Secretary Verma had, I think, a productive meeting with him back in June. We're on the cusp of arriving at so-called enhanced protocols for the treatment of sensitive information that SIGAR authorities want access to. And so my engagement with him, likewise, is an effort to improve our relationship and a reflection.
I would just note, Mr. Chairman, before concluding, bureaucracy is a lot less important than figuring out whether or not the Taliban is benefiting from U.S. taxpayer money. And I would hope that moving forward, the nonsensical bureaucracy and discussions about what kind of relationship we have is a lot less important than dealing with the actual issue of whether or not the Taliban is using U.S. taxpayer money to fund their operations.
Thank you very much, Congressman Lawler, and it's very appropriate we have cleanup now with Congressman Scott Perry of Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for being here. I'm wondering what's the end goal? How long are we going to be in Afghanistan providing all this aid? What's the plan? Can you codify that in one sentence? Are we there forever, or what are we doing?
You know,
What's our mission?
we're dealing with a really tough environment in which to protect American interests. Our goal is to protect the American people, first and foremost, to secure the release of American hostages, and multiple Americans, as I said at the outset, are still
I get that.
Still there. We want to continue relocation and resettlement operations. Thankfully, those are continuing.
Okay, so that apparently costs a lot of money. The strategic national security interest, can you talk to me, can you talk to us about that? I mean, are we hoping that Afghanistan is a bulwark against Iran? What's the national strategic security interest that it costs us billions of dollars to be there? I'm trying to figure that out, because what I feel like is that we got in a fight with a bully. We lost the fight. We got punched in the face. He took our lunch money. And now we just keep on paying the lunch money in hopes that he doesn't beat us up again. So tell me the national security interest here.
You know, I'm sure you've seen the same reports I have. Brown University estimates we spent over $2 trillion in Afghanistan.
It's gone.
20 years.
We're not getting it back, right? We don't think we're getting it back.
The investment that we're making now is radically, by many, many factors, more modest.
I get that. We're not over there occupying the country, but that doesn't tell me what the national. Are we trying to somehow safeguard the $2 trillion investment that we spent in Afghanistan? Is that what you're telling me?
You know, I'm going to revert to our national interests. And
sir, you're the guy. It says right here, you're the Deputy Assistant Secretary. They sent you, so you should know this. What is our national security? Can you describe it for anybody?
Our national interest in Afghanistan is to ensure it never again becomes a safe haven.
It is. It's a terrorist superstate, brother. Are you kidding me?
That's not our assessment.
It's not your assessment, but it's reality. Can you talk to me in the remaining time about the security chief of Kandahar and the Taliban Intelligence for Foreign Service, or whatever they call him, his last name? There's 3 last names here, I guess. Abdul Rashid Munib. Anything you know about him traveling to North Korea in pursuit of nuclear weapons technology and cooperation?
No.
Are you aware of it?
Absolutely not.
You don't know anything about it, so that's a false claim.
I've not heard of it. I'm happy to talk to you about it.
Please do.
I'm curious where you're getting that report.
Okay, it's been widely reported on open source. What about their interest in taking nuclear weapons from Pakistan, the Taliban?
I've seen no indication that they haven't.
And you've heard no reporting to the same either?
No.
Okay, so you will run that down. You will run that down, and you will report back to us in the classified setting that apparently we're going to have.
I have doubts about whether it exists, but I'm happy to take a look.
Okay, I hope you do. All right, and I'll give you my information when you give me yours at that time. Let me ask you this. We had a conversation a little while ago where we were talking about people from the Taliban traveling, and you kind of implied that there was an agreement that they were restricted from travel except for the Doha portion where they were given a waiver, right, because they wanted to go travel and work out the arrangements, right, of the American withdrawal in Doha, right? So the Taliban leaders were allowed to travel during that period of time. But the waiver expired. We didn't take it from them. The waiver expired. So right now they're prohibited from travel. And you're the guy. You're the guy for this administration. So can you tell us why the United States voted 15 times? The waiver expired in 2022. In 2023, the U.S. voted 15 times to grant waivers to sanctioned Taliban members. Why did we do that?
Because we see as a part of an overall strategy of engaging all Afghans, and that includes the Taliban, in order to protect our interests. We see it as in our interests.
So it's in our interest to let terrorists travel to places like North Korea or wherever else they want to travel.
To occasionally meet with senior members of the Taliban in order to talk about issues to do with fulfillment of their security commitments, the release of American hostages.
So let me ask you in the remaining time about the release of American hostages. We're paying them billions of dollars. This poor slob, this poor guy, Ryan Corbett, I don't know if his family's here or whatever. What are we doing to leverage the billions of dollars to Afghanistan to get this poor guy out. And, you know, this lady up here asked this poor woman here what she's doing about depression and mental health. This is a terrorist superstate with a regime that is criminal and terrorist and act like animals. Like, she can do something about that. What are we leveraging the billions of dollars to get this guy out, to get the other people out, and to ameliorate the circumstances of women and children in that country? What are we doing to leverage that?
So you talk about leverage. The kind of normalization that the Taliban seek, it's about sanctions relief. 135 Taliban members are still subject to 1988 sanctions. That includes an asset freeze and a travel ban. They want a normal relationship with international financial institutions. They want the return of $9 billion in assets that are located outside of Afghanistan. They want to seat their permanent representative in New York. They also want diplomatic accreditation. All of that is off the table until they stop taking American hostages, until they get girls back in school at the secondary level and the university level, allow women to participate in public life, and until they take additional steps that would give us greater confidence they take their security commitment seriously.
Sir, I appreciate your answer. I got to tell you, it's hard for me to remain calm here. I don't know how to tell you this, but people in hell want ice water. And the Taliban's not going to do any of that stuff because they don't have to. They have what they want. Plus, they have billions of dollars from the United States to just keep coming in while they keep doing all those things. I yield.
No. Thank you very much, Congressman Perry. As we conclude, indeed, as we just saw with the excellent concerns of Congressman Perry, we've established in this hearing that the Taliban Secretary West are benefiting from U.S. tax dollars. And this needs to be put in the context of Anna Corbett, whose husband is a hostage in Afghanistan. And indeed, her tax dollars are being used to fund her husband's captors. That is just so inexcusable, and we will proceed with a further backup hearing. And at this time, I do appreciate the witnesses being here and the members for their questions. The members of the subcommittee may have additional questions which will be provided, and we would like for you to respond in writing. And pursuant to committee rules, all members may have 5 days to submit statements, questions, and extraneous materials for the record, subject to the length limitations. Without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned.